welcome everybody. We are recording this meeting, as you just saw pop up on your screen. So be advised. We'll go ahead and call this first South Edition Community Council General Meeting of 2022 to order. First, I hope everybody has been able to see the agenda. We posted it on the South Edition website, as well as on Facebook and linked on Nextdoor. Just as a heads up, I will be chairing tonight's meeting. I'm the vice president. President John Thurber is traveling and unable to attend, so you're stuck with me. Here goes nothing. First, I would like to know if anybody would like to make any changes or additions to the agenda. And let me see if I can't pull that up real quick. Oh, I had it. Let me do it a different way. Okay, I think this should work. Can you guys see the agenda right there?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the current agenda. And I, if it's okay, would like to make an addition. First of all, under reports, Chris Constant, our assembly member, will not be able to attend tonight. He's doing the reapportionment town hall, which benefits us because we're going to be adding a new seat. So we'll have additional representation, but they have to go through that reapportionment process first. In lieu of Chris's report, I would like to add a report from the mayor's office. I know that we have someone from the mayor's office online, and going forward, the executive board was contacted by the mayor's office. They have let us know that they are interested in making a renewed engagement with our community council, and going forward, we will add them permanently to the agenda so they can give a report. But if none object, then I would like to put them under reports following the legislators, following Senator Beach and Representative Fields. Do any object to that? Fran, I can't see the screen. Is anybody objecting?
I'm not seeing anyone objecting. If anybody's objecting, I think we probably should have it by voice, because I can't see everybody on here.
I'm going to go ahead.
I don't think there's any objections. Okay.
Well, hearing seeing none, we'll go ahead and make room on our agenda for the mayor's office to give a report. Next item of business. Actually, before I move on, does anybody else have any recommended changes to the agenda? Hearing seeing none, I'm moving on, and I would ask that we can approve our meeting minutes from our previous general meeting on December 16th. Would somebody like to make a motion on that?
I'll make them.
I would, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So,
Mosh?
Yes, I would make the motion, and I would also like to ask you to remind people to sign into the chat.
Thank you. Yes, if you've just joined us, go ahead and put your name in the chat so we know who's attending. That'll help us keep a record, and it will also help our secretary, Patrice, with her next minutes. So I think we've made a motion, and I've heard a second to approve our meeting minutes. Any opposed? Hearing seeing none. Okay, our minutes are approved. We'll go on to our reports, and I think Senator Begich hasn't joined us yet, but he may attend. Mercedes is part of his staff, and she's going to let us know in a little bit. So I'd like to move on to Representative Fields. Our reports will be 3 minutes each. Representative Fields, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Session has started. The governor gave his state of the state this week, and I guess I was struck by how much the governor's state of the state mirrored what legislators have been trying to do over the last 3 years, oftentimes in opposition to the governor. And I wrote a pretty detailed newsletter and sent it out. And if anyone doesn't get my newsletter, I'm happy to just let me know and I can get you added and send the full rundown. But, for the last 3 years, we've fought to fully fund education. The governor's vetoed it. We've fought to fund education facilities. The governor's vetoed it. We've fought to fund domestic violence shelters, homeless shelters, civil legal services for veterans and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. The governor's vetoed it. We've restored the funding. We've tried to fund shellfish testing to boost the mariculture industry. The governor's vetoed it. We've fought to fund local food production in the Matsu Valley and Delta Junction. The governor's vetoed it. We have fought to fund rural public safety. The governor's vetoed VPSOs. We have funded expansion of Office of Children's Services and foster care and other services for vulnerable children. The governor's vetoed it. A lot of these services we've been able to restore, not all of them. So in his state of the state, the governor walked through all these programs. And it was, if it wasn't dark, it would be funny because he said, these are programs that help people. People first. Literally, he created a new initiative called the People First Initiative to fund the programs that the legislature has funded over his objection for the last 3 years. So it was surreal. And at the same time, I felt like it was a vindication. And I don't mean that a vindication of the votes I've made, but really the work that legislators from every region and from every party have done. And I would highlight former Speaker Bryce Edgman, current Speaker Louis Stutes, former Senate President Kathy Giesel, the co-chairs of the finance committees in both the House and Senate have all played a huge role in protecting those programs. So, as we start the session, I look back across the 3 years that I've been in office and we've been under this administration. And it's incredible to me that we're in a better place today than we were 3 years ago. The permanent fund is at its highest level ever. We have adhered to our percent of market value framework. In some cases, we've actually managed to expand protections for human services, like with the Pioneer Homes. And all of that has come in a very challenging environment. So I think the governor's speech was very much an election year speech. And I think the question I have is, how do we capitalize on these election year dynamics to fund some of the things that have not been adequately funded despite our best efforts? Schools, the governor has vetoed, and we were not able to restore inflation adjustment for classroom education funding. That's why classroom sizes are larger. Anchorage is falling further behind at a rate of $30 million per year in deferred maintenance for school facilities because the governor vetoed, and we weren't able to override vetoes on school bond debt reimbursement. We can fund school bond debt reimbursement this year. So we have to capitalize on this opportunity of some people's greater attention on elections to fund the core services that really matter to the community. There are a couple bills I worked on that passed the House last year that I'm trying to work to get past the Senate. One of them is the ABLE Act to expand savings accounts for people with disabilities. I'm excited that bill has a hearing in its first Senate committee next week, the Senate Health and Social Services Committee. I met today with the Senate Education Chairman Roger Holland about an apprenticeship bill designed to strengthen career and technical education from the secondary school system into apprenticeship with linkages to college credit. That's a really important bill. The Alaska State Hospital and Nursing Home Association is actually applying for this very large, ambitious federal grant aligned around apprenticeship. So I'm very hopeful that we can build that statutory framework. Those are the primary things that spring to mind right now, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, and actually, I forgot to mention, just yesterday, the Labor and Commerce Committee passed a bill that would restore a defined benefit pension option for all public employees, teachers, troopers, police officers, at both state and local levels of government. And that bill is really important for education, for public safety, and for so many frontline public employees. Does anyone have questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
About the defined benefits program, will that be retroactive and include current and past state employees, or is it from the state forward? Or whenever it's passed forward?
Oh, exactly. Might be on mute.
Could you say again?
Zach, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize it remuted. It's designed for tier 4 employees who don't currently have a defined benefit option, and it's designed so you can buy in with your years of service. So, you know, and it's a choice. I'm a tier 4 employee, so I have a 401k. You know, someone like me could either keep their 401k or buy in years of services and essentially convert over to defined benefit. If you're tier 1 or 2, of course, you have defined benefits is not going to mess with that. It's designed to address the lack of defined benefits for newer state employees and for state employees who are coming into the system. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Zach? I don't see any. So let's go to Mercedes. I think Mercedes is going to give us the report for Senator Begich's office. Thanks,
everyone.
Hi, my camera is fancy, so I apologize. It's going to zoom in and out a lot. I'm Mercedes Colbert. I'm Chief of Staff to Senator Tom Begich, and I apologize. He had a call that is going on still in the Capitol, so he won't be able to make it right now. He may be able to join later. I also want to give a shout out to Veronica, who I worked for many years ago, and it's always fun to see her. So hi, Veronica. So just quickly, we actually have quite a few bills being scheduled for Senator Begich next week. We're pretty excited about. Of course, Lukey in our office continues to work on the education bill that Senator Begich has been working very closely with Senator Holland and Senator Hughes in the Education Committee. That was in front of Senate Finance this week. If you follow the senator on Facebook, he just posted an update about that. And he is working on getting the House companion as well, helping out Representative Tuck there in House Education. So our hope that the Education Reform Act will come through in the Senate first and meet over in the House. And then the House will get the last stab at it there. And one of the big things that Senator Begich is working on negotiating now still is a fiscal plan. So we're hopeful that actually can happen. We'll hold out our optimism. I will say that I feel that the mood in the Capitol is fairly optimistic, much more so than I would have thought after 10 months of session. And I effectively am a Juneau resident now. So, I mean, you could say that about a lot of people now, I guess. But honestly, I think a lot of people took November and December seriously and took some time to decompress. And we've been really encouraged by the number of legislators and the governor coming to the table to come up to talk about ideas and commonalities. And that's real. I really do feel encouraged about that. So, and likewise, we have a ton of money coming to us from the federal side through President Biden's initiatives, and we're excited to work on those capital projects. So thank you, Daniel, for throwing that on the agenda. It's my most favorite time of year. And but it is really exciting to hear about the projects that are coming through our communities. So thank you for your work on that. And I'm happy to answer questions about that later too. But yeah, the budget process is starting out in the House. We saw today the House Finance Committee converted a lot of the governor's budget items to what's called a baseline, so we can actually see how much money is being suggested for spending on items like the ferry, for a number of other pieces that frankly the governor was using federal money to make it look like the budget was lower. And there's definitely some questions there about that approach that Rep. Fields he had touched on as well. So I think that the budget process will be more transparent now going forward, which we're encouraged about. So anyway, I think there's a real possibility of not spending another $2 million on special sessions this year. So we're hopeful we'll come together, get a good budget out, and get some good initiatives out, good policies done, and get home in a timely fashion this year. And I'm happy to help answer any questions for Senator Begich.
All right, any questions for Mercedes? All right, in that case, I think we're going to move on to Ms. Portia. She's joining us again on behalf of the mayor's office. I'll throw it over to you. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you all. My name is Portia Erickson. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the Mayor's Office. So a few things that we'd like to highlight, and I'll just show on the camera. I'm sure everyone has received their green cards. So those were mailed out on January 12th for your property tax assessment. And just wanted to let people know, I know there was a lot of concerns about property assessment going up. And so if anyone does have any questions in terms for the property assessor, just want to recommend that there is an option to come in person or to call. If you have any concerns, they've asked that that could be the first step versus starting the appeal, because the appeal process does also require deposit. And then it requires just some other checks and balances with Board of Equalization. And so a lot of times they're able to find solutions just directly within property appraisal. And I'm happy to take any questions in relation to that too, or if anyone is ever looking for an opportunity to hear from the property assessor, we're still looking for that full-time position, but there is other resources available. So if anyone is interested in that, I'm happy to direct them in the right place. The other thing I'd like to talk with you about, just in terms of COVID resources, there is not necessarily in your district, but still just for opportunities for testing locations, because I know from about Christmas through New Year's, many people had concerns about the long wait times. There is going to be a new location that Capstone is operating starting tomorrow, the 28th, and that's going to be behind Cabela's. And that one's going to almost allow for up to 500 tests per day. It's a huge, huge lot. So just want to let you know that that is another resource for testing opportunity. And then also on the 19th, the federal government launched a partnership with the United States Postal Service for at-home test kits. So you can get up to 4 shipped to you for free. And I'll put that link in the chat, but that's another opportunity to get at-home test kits. The municipality has requested an additional 25,000, but those have not come in yet, just, you know, with supply and demand. So it would encourage you, if you're looking for those resources, to use the Postal Service for getting those mailed to you. And then I just would like to kind of move on to a couple of events that we have coming up. This week is National School Choice Week. So with that, the Anchorage Public Library, this is a great tools and resources for parents and children. They're having a K-12 school fair this Saturday from 1 to 4 in the atrium. And this is there'll be public school represented there, school district will be there. There'll be charter schools, private schools, just a great opportunity to hear from some other vendors. And with the lottery coming up on February 1st for in public schools, this is a great opportunity just to kind of learn what opportunities are out there for children and parents. And then lastly, as you guys know, Tonga has been affected with disaster. So our office decided to work with our Chief Equity Officer into getting resources out to Tonga. So we've just now launched a campaign with Matson for getting crates directly to Tonga. And I will put that link in the chat as well. There's an opportunity both to make donations financially, or dropping items off to the Polynesian community here in Anchorage, which includes like sugar, flour, just the basic necessities that they're asking for. So great opportunity to get back to your community and provide resources and relief to Tonga. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions from anyone.
Any questions for Portia for the mayor's office? Which Cabela's did you say?
So, just the South Anchorage.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question. This is Harry.
Go ahead, Harry.
Hi, Harry.
Hi, Harry. Hey, Portia, this is Harry Need. I'm on the executive board. We have a resolution that's going to be read for a second time tonight regarding placement of assembly approval for the chief medical officer. And I was just curious if the administration had a comment on that before we discussed it for a second time tonight.
Well, Harry, thanks for allowing me to comment on that. So I've seen that circulated through a few community councils. We're very supportive of the executive branch having that executive choice for choosing the chief medical officer, because it is the direct support to get resources with healthcare directly to the mayor. So that relationship is really within the executive branch. And I will just leave it at that.
Okay, and then I want to remind everybody who's attending to go ahead and sign into the chat. And I know some folks are attending by phone, and just so we have a record of our attendees, 907-230-1054. Who's that? I don't know if you can hear me. If that's your phone number, 907-230-1054.
Tom Stevens.
Tom Stevens. Welcome, Tom. And then we have 907-272-2583. 272-2583. Who was that? Can you come again? It's a bit muffled. Let's try one more time. 272-2583. All right, I'm going to move on. And if anybody else has joined us and hasn't signed into the chat, let's use this opportunity to do so. I do not see anybody from APD or AFD joining us tonight. As I said earlier, President John Thurber is traveling, can't be with us. So that brings us to my report. I only want to do one thing. As Mercedes pointed out earlier, we are going to be discussing our capital improvement project request that we're submitting to Senator Begich's office. Kathleen, later in the agenda under new business, Kathleen Hahn's going to present on that, but I thought I would show if anybody kind of wants to get a jump on that and look at the projects that the executive board has brought forward. Kathleen will talk all about this, and so I don't want to steal her thunder, but I do want you to be able to look at it. So I put a link in the chat just to our FCC website. And then let me show you if, let's see if I can get back. So here's our FCC website, South Edition Community Council. Look at that. I don't know whose garden that is, but it looks beautiful. If you scroll down on our page, top capital improvement projects to date. Can you guys see where that link is? If you hit that, that'll bring up this list. And there are 8 projects, but we'll talk about a couple of them, or I think there's one that will be eliminated and one that will be added. So we'll go through that. But if anybody wants to take a look at that in advance, because later after Kathleen's report, we will be accepting nominations in real time. If anybody has a project in mind for a capital improvement that they want to put forward, they can make a motion to do so, and we can vote on that. Okay, moving on.
Daniel, just to let everybody know that I did add that document into the chat too, so.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for doing that, Fran. Oh, Ruth Ann, looks like you have a question. Go ahead.
I'm wondering about past submittals. Is anybody tracking, what was submitted last year or the year before, and then whether any of them were granted, where we've been successful? That's what I've always been curious, and haven't seen that.
Great question. And again, I don't want to steal too much away from Kathleen's presentation, but yes, and she'll talk about why these projects, where we got them, and also there was one eliminated because it has been funded already. So yes, there will be some follow-up on that in a little bit, Ruth Ann, thanks. On that note, I'm going to go to Kathleen Hahn for her treasurer report.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Daniel. So my treasurer's report, I'm going to start by mentioning that there is a document in the South Edition website that lists historical financial information. It's titled SACC Historical Financial Reporting, and it covers a period of time from January of 2016 through June 30 of 2021. So just a reminder that our fiscal year is July 1st through June 30. So that historical document covers up through June of last year, and then other financial reports are included on the website for the months that we met, up through and including the December report, which is what I'll switch to now. So the December 31 of 2021, there's a profit and loss and a balance sheet that has been uploaded to the website. And let's see, I just wanted to mention, so if you're interested in looking at those numbers, it's available there. There's not much change. We get a little bit, we get a few cents of interest, and we get some contributions to our Give Better fundraising platforms that are both outlined and explained on the balance sheet. What I just wanted to highlight tonight, the restricted net assets on the balance sheet, they total $4,906.44. Restricted net assets are to be used exclusively for the creation, development, and publishing of the neighborhood plan. So we have $4,906.44 towards that. Unrestricted net assets are $1,979.79, and that's an accumulation of general net income that we've just accumulated over the past few years. So that's kind of the upshot of all those reports. They were sent off to the executive committee earlier this week, and I think they were uploaded to the website probably Tuesday-ish. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them now.
And Ruth Ann, I think your hand's up from previous, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. Let me get.
And so I'm happy to take questions related to the capital improvement projects that we submit to the city every year, and in particular, the capital improvement funding request that we're going to submit to the state of Alaska when it's time for my report in new business. So back to you, Daniel.
Okay, great. Moving on then, we will go to Ruth Ann for our Federation of Community Councils report.
Well, this will be quite brief because much of what you're covering is what was covered at the community council. Just a couple things as an FYI. If you're ever looking for minutes from past meetings and they're not up there, that's most likely because there was not a quorum. So without the quorum, they're not taking the minutes. I think I've attended 5 meetings now, and twice or 3 times there was no quorum. They need 19 delegates. The other thing that I will bring to the next meeting is the FCC has asked that at the beginning of the council meetings, if you're recording, that you place the FCC recording guidelines at the beginning of each meeting. And I'll get a copy of those. They're not published on their webpage. There was a change in the officers. The vice president had stepped down. So Linda Chase is now the new vice president. So that worked out pretty well. The treasurer's report, I just always find this interesting. The municipality provides the FCC with $90,000 a year, and that's, they spent it all. And I have never delved into the budget, but the budget is available. I was going to mention something about the transportation projects, but our transportation expert, Cheryl, is on the call, so no need to get into that. There is the issue of a representative from the FCC on the Municipal Homelessness Committee, this issue came up. It was stated that in the past, the Assembly has invited and offered a seat to a representative from the FCC or, the community councils on that committee, but there is none this year, and the FCC was going to follow up with that. Portia was present, so she's already spoke on the mayor's office. There was one other thing, and I'll wrap it up. I recall that Portia had said that there's now it's kind of like a 24/7 COVID drive-through test site at 5,000 Spenard Road. If she had already mentioned that, I apologize for repeating. But Portia, could you confirm that that still is up and running? Because that's a pretty good deal.
Yes, ma'am. So there's been some issues with traffic there in the last few days. So that was why we kind of transitioned to this Cabela's location, just to have a little bit more expansion for cars and traffic. So I can let you know when that one is back up to the full 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
You're very
If you have
welcome.
any questions or if you have any issues you'd like brought up, you can certainly just email me. Thank you.
All righty. And then, so any questions for Ruth Ann, our FCC delegate? She does such a great job on our behalf. Thanks for the report, Ruth Ann. So next we'll go to Miss Margot for our Anchorage School Board report. Margot Bellamy.
Thank you. A lot's gone on, guys, since I was last here last year. Well, we got our bond passed. The Assembly passed our bond, and that we're continuing in conversations with the group with the design committee, and hopefully, as we continue to have those meetings, we'll reach more and more common ground with the community. So a couple of things I want to hit on tonight, and make sure that we get your input on our superintendent search. As you know, the superintendent rendered her retirement, at least gave us notice of retirement back in November. And so we are in the phase 2 of that process, which is to gather as much public input as possible on the characteristics and attributes that you would like to see in the next superintendent. So from the board's perspective, we will make the final decision, but we want to make that decision with as much input from the community as possible. In the chat, I put a link to the survey. We've had a series of community town hall meetings. Hopefully you were able to get to a couple of those. The survey will remain open until the 2nd of February. Our spring lottery, I think the mayor's office shared earlier that we will kick off our spring lottery on February 1st. So those who have littles or big kids, and you want to look at an optional or a choice program, this would be your opportunity. Usually the lottery opens right at the same time that we have our Visit Our Schools month. But due to the increase in our COVID count, we're not having that. We're not having the in-person visit your schools this month. Many schools, though, will have some kind of online information session, much like what we're having here on Zoom, much like what we're doing tonight. So if you're interested in that, contact the school principal. Let's see. We are in the process now of our budget, all things budget, trying to balance our budget. We will be have a 2-hour work session, followed by as many other work sessions as we need to look at our budget. And so there are budget documents that are already online. I'll put a link in the chat so you can look at our budget documents if you so choose. We will be live streaming the meetings, so you'll have that opportunity as well. And we have welcomed 100 Afghan refugee families into our city. Many of them had young school-age children. They are, as far as getting to school, getting them settled, that is going very, very well. And so we have welcomed them with open arms. Our COVID next update you can expect by January 30th or 31st, near the end of the month. I can't believe we're already there already, but our mask mandate remains in place. Superintendent will continue to do bi-monthly updates on where we are with that. And with that, our next meeting will be the 8th of February. It'll be the 8th and the 22nd this month. And so you're welcome to testify or give public comments. Those documents are posted a week in advance. So with that, I'll answer your questions and thank you.
Any questions for Margot? Alrighty, well, Mark, would you mind putting that link in there one more time? Because I think it might have kind of got lost in the shuffle for the superintendent search.
Absolutely, yes,
Thank you.
I can do that.
Okay, and then briefly before we move on to our old business, I thought I saw Mr. Shanigan join. I don't know if he's still here. We already did the mayor's office report, but if he has something that he wanted to throw in just briefly, I'll put that opportunity out there.
Nothing much. We still, I guess, one announcement that we still have a lot of boards and commissions that we're trying to find people to fill, and I think we have 74 vacancies. So most of them are updated on the Muni's website now with the vacancies or expiring seats. And even if someone sees a name on a board or commission that looks like a seat is expiring, we'd like to hear from the community if they think they ought to be retained for reappointment. That feedback is really good for us to have, since in some cases they were appointed in different administrations and we don't have a lot of feedback other than just the board. And so that part is really important for us to identify. And just our legislative program, we're preparing to go to Juneau to start taking the city's priorities that the assembly and the mayor have come to agreement on, and trying to advocate for either legislation or budgetary items. And right now the ports are the #1 item, but there's other things such as road and bridge repairs here local in the municipality. There's a lot of waterworks projects. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and move on then to old business. And our first item, I'm going to open up the floor to Harry Need and Dr. Ryan Webb to present on the resolution in support of assembly confirmation of the Muni's chief medical officer. Go ahead, guys, you have the floor.
Hey, Harry's here, but I was going to see if Dr. Webb wanted to speak to it. Just briefly to introduce it, this has already been read once, and the resolution was posted online. We didn't receive much dialogue on it last time. There was, I think, a couple minor changes that came in the interim. Executive board looked at it, no problem. We received comments from the mayor's office tonight, and I think this is ready to pass. But I'll see if anybody has any questions on it.
Dr. Webb, did you want to speak to the resolution?
I would second what Harry has already said. As he noted, this was previously discussed. It has been posted in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and formally move, just so that we can open discussion, that the South Addition Community Council supports the municipality of Anchorage elected officials exercising their authority to seek changes to municipal law and elevate the position of the municipality of Anchorage chief medical officer to a position requiring the confirmation of the assembly to ensure the position is filled by an experienced, qualified professional who can sustain their objectivity and the trust of local medical professionals, as well as the trust and confidence of the community.
And I'll second. This is Harry.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any questions for Harry or for Dr. Webb? All right, so hearing no discussion, I will go ahead and we'll move on to vote. So what we do that works real well, if we go down to the bottom of your Zoom page and you see reactions, and you hit reactions there, you can select either a green check mark or a red X. And before we go on to vote, I do want to clarify that only members of South Addition Community Council are eligible to vote. And that would be residents of South Addition, property owners in South Addition, or if you are representing a business in South Addition. So let's go ahead and take a vote. If you would like to see this resolution passed, go ahead and give me a green check. If you are opposed to the resolution, let's see a red X.
I'm not sure I see this. Hello?
Yeah, hey Sheila, there's a little happy face at the bottom. It says reactions.
Oh, okay, yeah. So if I hit that?
Hit that, and then if you'd like to vote yes, hit the green check mark. If you'd like to vote no, hit that red X.
Thank you for the guidance.
You got it. Okay, so I am seeing in my count, my automatic Zoom count, 17 green check marks. I do not see any opposed or any abstentions. I suppose I'll throw this out. Would anybody like to abstain? And I suppose if you'd like to abstain, you can just go ahead and speak up if you have your video turned off, or raise your hand if you want to abstain and your video is turned on. And then also what we've done in the past, each member of a household has a vote. So I see that, for instance, I think it's Bonnie and Seth are both on. So you would be eligible for 2 votes. I presume that you maybe would be 2 green check marks. Okay, so we'll add that, that'll be 18. If anybody else is watching as more than one person, we would just ask that you would turn your video on so we can confirm that there's more than one person. And we will add your vote as well. So Dr. Ryan, and then let's see, who is with you there? I think you already signed into the chat, but that looks like that'd be 2 votes.
Yep, Brian Kirkner.
So, hey, Brian. So that would bring our vote to, I believe, well, here I'm saying, okay, this is gonna be 20.
And Harry has 2 people as well. So that actually brings it up to 20 is what I'm seeing right now.
Thank you. There was a green arrow that was added before I counted Seth and Brian, and then Harry.
Harry doesn't have an arrow on there. So let's see, 19, 21.
Yeah, that's what I have as well. So we're going to say that the resolution passes with a final tally of 21 yeas, 0 nays, no abstentions. And with that, we can move on to our next item of business. I'll ask that you clear your green arrows. And then I believe you can do that just by hitting the green arrow again. That'll go away.
This is a timely issue, this particular resolution, so I'll just ask that if Daniel, if you could work with me to communicate this to Christopher and the assembly pronto so that they can have it on hand.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we can work.
Thank
and
you.
then Patrice, we'll get your help on getting a signed version then. Okay.
Sure, thank you.
Fantastic. So moving on to our next item of business, the South Addition Neighborhood Plan Update, and I'm happy to announce Miss Sheila Selcraig is here with us to give us a report on what she's been working on behalf of our Neighborhood Plan Committee, the Moving Forward Committee. Go ahead, Sheila, you have the floor.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I've got to show you the book that John left me with, right? And it's got everything you guys have done. And what I'd like to tell you is, in reality, you've done a really good job in every single event, at least so far as I'm reading, in terms of meeting the requirements of a good public fair process. And so as I look at the plan, and I'm still reading parts of that, what I would say is I describe it this way. It's like the foot is on the head and the arm is coming out the shoulder. It's all the pieces are not exactly where they need to be. So you can't tell it's a person, right? Because things are not really in the way that you are used to seeing how they are supposed to look like. And so what I've been working a tiny bit with John. I talked to him. I was on a vacation and I visited with him. And what I'm believing that I should do is to revise the introduction, and basically in the introduction, review like what we've done, like just in sentences, and event by event, let them know we've, event by event. And then also really kind of, I think we need to look at that opening description of who we are. I don't think we're 3 communities, we are 1 community, and it's a community plan. So the more cohesiveness we expressed about it, the better it is. And then this would be my opinion, is that I do think that the older homes, I have on the alley behind my house that I own, this cottage back there, and it was built in 1935. So we've got old buildings throughout the neighborhood. And I think we should highlight them as part of the charm of this neighborhood. But also what's interesting about this neighborhood is there are a lot of houses that are classic houses that were built by Ed Crittenton in the 50s. And so what we really have in this is what I see, and is what we really have in our neighborhood is just a historical kind of record of nice houses that were built at critically different times. And I think in many ways, it's really the thing that keeps us so interesting and so nice. So that's just my opinion that I'm bringing to it. Basically, as I move forward, what I plan to do is take each action that we've done and basically go through a set of things about it. And so basically the intent of that action, the outreach for that action, the participation for that action, and how we went about our, and our process in terms of how we outreached. And then also look at the action process. So what we say, we're going to do something, then describe how we did it, and then identify the outcome of it. And then also if it's had council review or not. So because we got beat up by the city because they didn't think we had done public process. And I think we really did do a lot of public process. I wasn't there for all of it, but when I read about the levels of things that were done, it looks to me like we're not in big trouble with this plan. It's just a matter of organization. And then let's see, basically that's where I am now. That I think that it's going to be, we're going to take section by section and action by action. And a lot of it's written. It's just about taking what's written and moving it over. And then I haven't read everything. I haven't seen anything right now that looks like we had a process that wasn't respected. I had some concerns over the summer. It seemed like there was some issues, but I think there's things to look at in each process and make sure that the outcome is reflected in the things that went on. So that's, and it's a big job. It's a big plan. It's a big job. I think John's going to be really helpful. He's got all the information together. I think we'll just take it one piece at a time. We may, once we get one section done, bring it in here, let you see it. Not even take a vote on it, just get a comment in terms of whether or not there's something missing. I think eventually we're going to want to, chapter by chapter, make sure that everybody's comfortable with it. So now, if there's something that you think I should be looking at that's important that I haven't talked about, or a concern you have that you want to talk to me about, you're welcome to do that. And if you don't want to talk right now about it, I can give you you can get my phone number, and I'm happy to talk with anybody who's concerned or having questions. And the truth is I don't have this done. I'm just catching up with you. And you did a really good job doing all the parts. That's what and I know it was hard. So, the plan will also address the planning committee. It'll just talk about how did this get done? And then what did we find and what do we want to do? That's the basic form. Any questions?
Questions for Sheila? Thank you, Sheila, for well, number one, for helping us out, coming back into the process. We really appreciate it, and for giving a report tonight. Any questions for Sheila?
I'm going to be here. Well, you did a good job, you guys. You should be proud. It was a lot of hard work. I just want to say.
Okay, so I don't see any questions, so I think we'll go ahead and move on. We're doing good, guys, tonight. This is great, nice and timely. Next, we have Bradley Coy with us, the Municipality of Anchorage's Traffic Department Director, and he's going to be giving us a presentation on a traffic study around Inlet View Elementary School. So Bradley Coy, go ahead, you have the floor.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me join your meeting tonight. Just a quick background about me. I've been at the municipality for about 5 months. I previously worked as a consultant for a local engineering firm as a traffic engineer. I live down in South Anchorage and have been involved in the Huff Middle Valley Community Council for the past 5 years. And so I really value, I would say, as anybody asked me, the community council meeting is the best 2 hours every month to know what's going on in your community with your representatives. You have, I mean, how many of our representatives have come to this meeting, right? So this is a great opportunity, and I really appreciate what everyone does. The reason I took this job is because I love building community. I view my job as a unique one because traffic is something that affects everybody. And in my viewpoint, everyone's an expert of their own experience. And my job is to try to take all of the experience that everyone has and integrate it together and come up with a perspective that tries to account for what everyone's experiencing. What's really tough to do, as you know, traffic engineering is not an exact science. It's about people. And so that is what I'm passionate about. And so I love this job, this opportunity. And I know I'm not perfect. And there are some things about pretty much anything that happens in a transportation network that is not going to be great for some people, and sometimes awesome for others. And so I'm hoping that with this presentation, I can share a little bit about what our department is doing with regards to the Inlet View Elementary School rebuild. So our role as the traffic engineering department at this time is to do a review, a major site plan review. Right now, we've been provided 65% plans on Inlet View Elementary School. I actually want to share my screen. Let's see if this works, that I can show you. Let's see, I'm going to share my screen so that I can move between a few things. There we go. Is my screen showing up?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, so here is Inlet View Elementary School. I'm sure many of you have seen this or versions of this. This is what's before the traffic engineering department right now. Our role in the traffic engineering department is that we get to review these plans, and we have 4 things that we look at. First is site access. For example, this site is proposing, this rebuild is proposing on the east side. There is a parking lot that has an entrance on the north and an exit on the south. And then over on the west side, there's the bus parking and access. So we look at access. We have driveway standards, we have spacing standards. We look and see, is it meeting the code? Is it too close to intersections? How is it too wide? Is it too narrow? Some of those things that we look at from a code and provide feedback. Another thing we look at is circulation. For example, on a school, you need a pickup drop-off area on the site. And so it has in this queue area, a place to pick up and drop off. We look at how do you get in and out of parking lots? Are there difficult intersections? What is the circulation going to look like? Is it going to be adequate? So that's number 2. Number 3, we look at pedestrian safety connections. As you can see here, the school, it's a little bit hard to see on this because it's all black and white, but the proposed school building does have a pedestrian path going straight to the front door area through the parking lot with striping and some bulb outs. So we look at pedestrian and then around as well on the other side of the bus pullout, there's sidewalks that are shown. And so we look at pedestrian connections. And then we also look at parking, looking at the site parking, how many stalls are being provided. The Anchorage code has minimum and maximums, trying to hit a sweet spot, not too much parking, but enough that it's not going to push traffic onto the neighborhood streets. And so we'll look at that. And so as we look at this site, it meets all of those code requirements. So from a code standpoint, our required response would be, check, it meets all those 4 standards. In addition to that, we do have some engineering judgment that we can apply, and we can submit comments on the design provided. We can make recommendations, and we can request studies. And we can look through our database as well to try to evaluate how are things operating. In a rebuild, it's not a new site that is adding new traffic as much as it's just, in this case, shifting how the traffic is going to be traveling. And so we do encode if a site is generating more than an estimated more than 100 peak hour trips than it was previously, then we will do a traffic study. If it's less than that, like in this case where it's rebuild, there might be some things that we look at more closely. And so we did meet with the developer and the school district previously, a pre-app meeting in preparation for this site plan review. And I did identify a few things. For example, this parking lot, you'll notice, is different than it had been a few months ago. We had suggested some simplification because there was some just internal circulation that we didn't feel was as good as it could have been. So we provided some suggestions, and they made some of those changes. And we did have some discussion about the access and how closely spaced it is to 13th Avenue and L Street. So we have a traffic signal here at L Street, and we were interested, how is this operating? And one thing you may know is that the municipality has traffic cameras on most of our traffic signals. Well, a lot of our traffic signals, I won't say most, but a lot of them, and we're continually adding more. So I wanted to show a video. We'll see if this comes up. Let's see, it's not letting me see. Okay, for me to show this, I can't see your faces. So can someone verbalize that you can see my screen with the
we can see it.
We see
Okay.
it.
And so we're trying to show a lot here. As my staff pulled the video, it might be hard to see because you've got 4 views, different directions. The one I'll point your attention to is the upper left. I think that shows more specifically what I'm going to be focused on today. So I'm going to go to the front, to the back, the start of this video, and you can see it's, pause this real quick. Up at the top, this was October 12th at 3:34 p.m. As many of you know, that's just a few minutes after school gets out. And we now have a group of students that are walking home from school with parents. And you can see traffic backing up along 13th, back towards Inlet Place. And so watching kind of, yes, there's congestion. There is traffic that is backing up, and that is causing some delays. But it's great to see kids out walking in the beautiful weather. I do have a winter one too that I'll show, and it's similar, but not quite as much traffic or as many walkers either. One thing that we noticed as we watched some of the way that this intersection operates is that the pedestrians do make it harder for the vehicles to be turning onto L Street. And so, are there some ways to have this signal perform better? And we think that there are some ways. And so we have a few ideas on that. Let me show you, before I talk about that, let me show you the winter condition. So here's the winter condition. Looks like something was on our camera, so sorry about that. But on the upper left, you can see a group of students, a little bit smaller, not quite as much traffic. This was one that we pulled from just a few days ago. I know conditions are not so great. I'm not sure if COVID is having an impact of how many people there are. There's not as much traffic, not as much backup. So light just turned red. We see someone just kind of eking through. I know that it's icy, so you can't stop so quickly, but then we've got the pedestrians crossing, not blocking too much traffic. Yeah, it's an icy hill. Those are some of the things that we're seeing on this. What can we do? So there's some of the video, right? We're looking at this, we're thinking, what are some ideas? This intersection, the school does have a crossing guard position available. They have not been able to fill it. There's some things that could be done to improve this intersection. If they had a crossing guard, they could hold all those students into one platoon and then cross them all together. So that's an idea of how to make this intersection perform better. We did look at retiming it a little bit, but most of the gains that we could get for 13th Avenue would be impacted by pedestrians taking up the rest of that time and not having it available for the vehicles. So this area is one that that we are thinking about that and are open to other insights. Given, like I said, you see this every day, for us to know exactly what's going on, any insight that you have is very valuable. But I think this is a good time to have some questions. If you have things that you'd like to ask of me, I see that there's a hand. I don't know, President, if you want to manage that or if I should just call on people, what would you prefer?
I'll go ahead. Let's do this. I see Martin has his hand on. So Martin, I'm going to have you on deck, but Cheryl, I know Cheryl can't really interact as much because she is just doing this kind of on phone and she has access to the chat. But Cheryl said, what % of this site plan well, that might be a question for maybe not for Mr. Coy, but for Paul Barrel, who I know is on the call as well. I think what Cheryl's asking, what % of this site plan is devoted to vehicles and parking compared with today? So I don't know if that's a question for Mr. Coy's presentation, unless you feel like you know the answer to that, Brad.
I am not sure. That is a really good question, but I don't know. Maybe Paul would know.
Yeah, I could address that if you'd like, Daniel.
Yeah, if you want to briefly chime in, go ahead.
So can you repeat the question one more time? I want to make sure I understand it.
Sure. I was asking what % of this site plan, so the school site, is devoted to vehicles and parking compared with today?
Percentage-wise, compared with today, I believe it's going to be more because we're increasing the parking count from what's there today with this parking configuration. So I would say that it's percentage-wise more than what's existing. But we did run the numbers and we presented that at the last meeting regarding green space versus asphalt and concrete space or hard space. And what we determined when we ran those calculations is that this current design and site plan has more green space than the existing site does by a couple thousand square feet.
Okay, and remind us, Paul, it's inletviewreplacement.com where we can find information about the replacement.
Correct. Yeah, inletviewreplacement.com, and all the documents that we've presented are on there. And there is a site plan on there that shows the percentages of the square footage that I just described.
Okay, and then briefly, Cheryl has a comment as well. I believe it's still illegal for cars to enter a crosswalk when pedestrians are in it. We do need that crossing guard. Okay, and with that, let's go to Mr. Hanson. Go ahead, Martin.
Oh, thank you. Brad, thank you. One thing that would clear up a lot of our traffic problems would be to have the pedestrians cross L Street on the north side. L Street is one-way southbound. People exiting, going to on 13th in either direction turn south, and they are of course blocked by pedestrians. If the pedestrians are crossing on the north side of the intersection, they wouldn't be in the way and traffic could flow. And then the pedestrians heading east on 13th towards City Market would be on the sunny side of the street, which is much less icy and a heck of a lot easier to walk on. And we've talked to traffic engineering before when Inlet Place was repaved in the summer of 2020. And they said, well, we can't consider it. Well, I think you ought to consider it again. What do you think? And I'm going to go mute now.
Yeah, so our team actually identified that as well. And one of our thoughts is that if you have a crossing guard, they would be able to direct the students and the parents. They'd have to cross two legs, right? They would cross the west leg and then the north leg. But they could cross the west leg while it's green for L Street, and then cross the north leg after that. So that definitely is something that we did identify. We also were looking at the school, and if you do look out, my bar's kind of shielding it, but if you, let's see if you look back to the back there, there's a crosswalk from the school that is on the south side of the 13th and Inlet Place intersection. And so there is quite a bit of back and forth. That's not as ideal, but that is definitely an option. One question I would have is that if you don't have a crossing guard, would we want to remove the crosswalk on the south leg and put up, one of the signs that says no crossing? That would be one way to not everybody's going to observe it because it would require some out of direction travel, but is that something that we would want to do? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, Brad, when I first lived in this neighborhood, I live right next to the new school. There were 3 lanes of 13th from Inlet Place to L Street, 2 straight ahead and 1 dedicated right turn lane for the southbound traffic. Could you bring that back?
That is an idea. If you would send me an email with that idea, then I can present that. My recollection is that L Street is a state road, if I recall.
L Street is a state road, but 13th is not.
So was it 13th that had that?
13th had the 3 lanes. You could leave my house, drive north on the place, turn right onto 13th, and then right onto L Street.
An exclusive right.
And other traffic that was going across town would have 2 lanes, or I'm sorry, and a lane to go forward. I'm sorry, there were 2 lanes, 1 to go straight across L Street and 1 to turn right onto L Street.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll look into that and talk with my staff and see.
How do I reach you? What's your email?
My email, I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Most people spell my name wrong. It's an alternate spelling of Bradley.
I want to point out, well, first of all, I want to take a moment of privilege and say I'm glad my car is not on this video, because when I come down L Street from work and I take that left, I'm in the left-hand lane, and I'm going to take a left up toward Sagaya City Market. And that is very slick there at that crosswalk. And often my car will skid. But then you also have some no's in the chat from Anna and Bonnie, some resounding no's to one of the ideas that was just discussed. So I want to point that out, and maybe Brad, I don't know how much you're able to capture the chat while you're also sharing your screen.
I turn my screen off so that I can see the chat.
Okay. And then with that, I want to go next to Deborah Hanson.
Hi there. I just wanted to make a couple comments. First of all, Paul, when you say that there's more green space with this new plan with the school plopped right in the middle of the current green space, you're actually not true even by your own numbers, because you included the parking area, which is absurd. And you also, with this new plan, it breaks up the green space around the building. Currently, it's all contiguous, which is one of the advantages in that you can see all the kids and people going on there. The comment I wanted to make about the traffic is I understand Title 21 provides for lots and lots of parking for cars. And we keep talking about this, but this is a walking neighborhood. Currently, there's an average of 23 cars that park at Inlet View School every day. And you're looking at how many parking places are you added between the staff and then the new huge parking lot? Something like 80. I mean, it just seems absurd that we're paving this really nice area. It's one of the few open areas to add parking that's not needed. So that's my comment, is why are you doing this? Why are we adding all this parking when we currently don't have it and we don't need it? And it's verifiable numbers that we don't need it. Anyway, that's my comment. Thanks.
Thanks, Deborah. Okay, next I want to go to Tomasz. Would you read your question that you put in the chat?
I can certainly read to, yeah, sure. So basically the question is about, during presentations prior, we heard about the changing focus of this school to become a school which is not going to be a strictly neighborhood school, but cater to parents who are, and children, obviously, who are coming off-site requiring driving. So my question is about your analysis stated that you looked at this site as a no change site in terms of its service because it's in the same location, so there is no traffic impact. But have you looked at the impact which the school profile will cause, which is basically adding more traffic?
Okay, sorry, as my mute was having trouble. As we look at, so your question is about causing more traffic, and I'm trying to understand what is changing about the school that would cause more traffic.
What is changing that, well, what I'm told by the school's plan, this school is no longer a classic neighborhood school. It's going to be a more regional reach with its educational focus, therefore drawing on a regional crowd to attend to the school, to attend that school. And I think probably the school district can confirm that, but that's what we were presented prior. Well, if that is the case, regardless of being in the same location, means that you have basically, it's almost like a change of use in terms of your actual audience or actual clients.
I could clarify that, Brad, before you answer that question. So the change, there is no change of use, and the school as it currently exists and how it's been functioning for the last decade or so more has been not just a neighborhood school, and has been the school that we're talking about, where it's a community-based school that a lot of the students are coming from outside of the neighborhood with vehicles. That's nothing new. That's something Inlet View has been doing for more than a decade, if not more, through zone exemption, because a lot of parents that work downtown have chosen to drive their kids to school and have them go to Inlet View because they work downtown. So that's nothing new. That's just how the school has evolved over the last 60 years. 60 years ago when it was first built, it was strictly just a dedicated neighborhood school. But over the last 60 years, it's evolved to what it is now. And so the new design is just based on the way the school currently operates. So there is no change from the way it operates.
Okay, then
now.
That's great. Thank you for the clarification, because then the previous question would be more valid, I guess, as by others, that if it's functioning for 10 years like that, then why the severe change in the site plan?
I could answer that, but I don't know if you want to get into that, Daniel. It's we're kind of getting off topic. So
what I would do. So I guess it's not really clear to me personally what the feedback between the site parking and the traffic study is going to be. So I don't know. Mr. Coy, if you do your traffic study, is that going to change the amount of parking of the school design or no?
Yeah, so there's a few things that come into play with the parking. We do have a parking code that has mins and maxes for the amount of parking for different sites. And I recognize that there are things unique about this school that could mean that you don't need as much parking as what our code has. And so there are allowances for being able to reduce parking. That is something that could be looked at if there was a study. It sounds like Lois in the chat mentioned about doing counts and seeing that there's less need for parking at this location than maybe other schools for, traffic so unique everywhere. So that's one consideration. Another consideration is that we have seen at schools all over Anchorage that if there's not enough queuing on site, that those queues back up and do impact the surrounding neighborhood. And that is something that we try our best to avoid. Huffman Elementary had some redesign a few years ago trying to minimize that. Those queues still back up almost to Huffman, but not quite. So that's avoiding impacting Huffman Road. Ocean View, if anybody's driven by Ocean View at even starting at 315, Johns Road is almost impassable unless you travel outside of your travel lane, maybe opposite direction of traffic. So there are those impacts that are coming in. So looking at this site, where the parking is to be able to have the queuing, it almost would be, it'd be hard. You couldn't necessarily give that back to the field, really looking at that layout. You could reduce the parking stalls, but likely that space from a queuing standpoint and looking at some of the operations looks to us like it's needed. So I'm not sure what you would gain there. Having the extra parking stalls also has the benefit, as we talked contingency plans, if there was a lot of traffic that was queuing back onto the road, having the extra parking would allow parents, instead of like what I see at Ocean View, we actually have our son in preschool there, that there's not a preschool at our neighborhood school, so he can't walk with his siblings. But at Ocean View, when we go there, when we park in the parking lot because we don't want to wait in that long queue. And so having a big enough parking lot to accommodate that has value. And so that's a contingency plan in this case that we've talked with the school district about if queues are long. So those are some of the factors with the parking. I'll be happy to answer more questions about that. I see that we do have a few other questions.
Yeah, in the interest of time, so I have a queue here. We're going to go to Mitch and then Bonnie and then Sheila, and then we're going to move on to our next item of business. So Mitch, I'd like to go to you next. And also just want to point out too, there are comments in the chat you may want to capture as well, Mr. Coy. Okay, Mitch, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that as the newly added member here of the Building Design Committee for the Inlet View project, that I have been notified that on the February 1st, we do have a new meeting to consider some modifications to the parking lots. And the one that has been described, at least at the assembly meeting when the bond was passed, was an L-shaped parking lot that had the entrance on 12th Avenue, and then the exit would exit eastbound on utilizing the existing intersection of 13th and Inlet Place. So it would get rid of some of the issues that have been brought up and concerns with only a couple of places to back up from the stop sign and also the street light at that intersection of 13th and L. So this is something that's been proposed. I haven't been presented with it. I've heard it verbally described at the meeting. So I guess one of the questions that I have for Brad would, if the parking lot exited at 13th using that existing intersection, would you be more supportive of that as far as traffic impact to the neighborhood or less? Can you speak to that one way or the other, assuming the parking lot is the same parking spot count?
Yeah, so I would say that we are definitely supportive, being able to align an entrance like that. So instead of having 2-3 intersections that are close, you have just that one right there. That is something that we're supportive of. for sure, that concept. And not that we would say you have to do that, but if that is what the community and the developer are interested in, traffic is not going to put up any roadblocks or any opposition.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate you answering that, and the fact that you'd be supportive of that to help mitigate the traffic impacts. That's all I have for questions.
Okay, let's go to Bonnie next.
Hi, hey Brad, I had a question for you. I
Okay.
think Martin Hansen had a really good point that, and I was wondering, since we're so short-staffed at Inlet View, we have no noon duties or crossing guards. Would we be able to do something with like lights, or how could we encourage the kids? Do you guys have different ways that could encourage pedestrians over to that north side? So that they don't block traffic besides its crossing guard, because it just doesn't feel like staffing is going to change anytime soon.
That is the million-dollar question, and traffic is limited in what things. I mean, you probably looked around, or walked or biked around Anchorage, and there's people doing things that really are not ideal. And the best, I would say, in any school-related situation is talking with the school, having a heavy education campaign. That's how you can really target that specific audience. From our standpoint, we can put up signs, people disregard the signs. We could remove the crosswalk, people disregard that. And I don't think I'd want to do that, because really accommodating pedestrians is a key value in that safety aspect. But what sort of communication with the school could we have to encourage that? I think that would be the line that I would go first, would be kind of like my kids' schools. At the start of school, they have a parent meeting and information they send home that says, here's how we're going to be doing pickup, drop off, and other practices. I think that would be the best bet to try something like that.
Good suggestions. I think that's good. Teach the kids.
Yeah. Brad, do you guys there's a flashing light at a crosswalk up at West High back by the pool? Do you guys are you who we would talk to about different flashing lights at least? Or would that be a different part?
Whether on the traffic signal, if it was like a red person flashing, or like if it was a countdown timer, or if it's on the traffic signal system, then yes, we would be the one that you would talk with.
Okay. All right.
And if you have ideas on that, send me an email, and I can put you in touch with our staff that operate the signals.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let's go to Sheila next. Oh, Sheila, you may be on mute.
Bonnie just brought up a question that I have. I live at the other end of 12th, and what you just described around the school that we're looking at here has layers and layers of things already. And we've got I'm just going to make a comment that we've got Chugach Elementary and Central, and there is no flashing light and no cross person there. And it's a place where I look at it, and I've seen, since I've lived here, I've seen 6 almost hit children. And when I just want to raise this issue, and maybe we could talk about it in the next segment of this, but the reality is that I went to the state and talked to them about it and sent information, and they told me that it wasn't a designated crossing walk. And I think both on L Street and on C Street around these schools, it's really important to do the kind of traffic calming that happens by West. Everybody knows that you come storming up that hill, and then we all slow down, because also occasionally there's a policeman there. And I do want to say Anchorage has a history of putting in crosswalks after kids are dead. And we've done it many times. So this is we really need to slow the speed down in the sections that are next to the schools. and adults have to just get used to it, is what I think. I mean, and I do think we're going to have some tragedies if we don't.
I'm definitely supportive of lower speeds around schools.
Yeah, how do we get it to happen?
Are you meaning a 25? Are you meaning a 20 mile an hour?
Yeah, 25 or 20 mile an hour, because literally people come down C Street at like 60 miles an hour down that hill, and there's like 3 kids crossing, and it's always the last one. You know, it's a little kid tagging along in the behind that are almost hit. So.
Oh, so you're talking about Chugach then again instead of.
Yeah, Chugach. Well, but I walk along. If you walk along L Street, the speeds are really fast, and kids are like walking on sidewalks and slipping around. So I just think the speed thing is essential to make these things safe.
Yeah, thank you for your comments.
Hey, thanks, Brad, for coming and giving a presentation. And would you put your contact information in the chat one more time, just
Sure.
so, because I know we could talk about this all night.
Right.
And I think, you know, folks are concerned and want to make sure that they can get a hold of you, and then also that you're able to capture the comments and questions in the chat as well. I do want to move on, folks, just because we do have some more very important stuff to talk about, and there's a time limit. There's some deadlines here that we got to get to. So going to go forward into our new business now. And the first item is our capital improvement project request. Senator Begich's office needs these draft requests by noon tomorrow. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Kathleen.
Hello, good evening again to everybody. Thank you, Daniel. So I've put a couple things into the chat. I put the link to the city's community council surveys, where we have our list of the MOA capital improvement projects. This list was voted on, and last year, the June 2020, no, excuse me, I think it was actually voted on in the May 2021 council meeting. The deadline to have this information to the city is by June 15, so it was uploaded to that site by then. The second item I put in is an Excel spreadsheet that lists the top priorities that are from that MOA capital improvement list. And at the very top of that list, I added one that was brought to my attention earlier this week. It's the complete street study of ACI and L streets. And if you open that spreadsheet, you'll see it's at the very top of the list, and I've red highlighted where that project's not yet prioritized. So,
Kathleen, do you want me to screen share that?
That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, if that works for everybody.
My computer.
So including the complete street study, there are now 9 projects that are listed on the fiscal year 22 State of Alaska Capital Fund request that I'm proposing that we send to the state. And as Daniel mentioned, it's due to them by noon tomorrow. Once this is approved, I'll probably send it off to Mercedes tonight, but we just wanted to have a chance to talk about it.
Let me make sure I got the current version. I'm sorry, because I know we did do an update on this, didn't we? This isn't the right one, is it? Because this doesn't have the AC.
No, Daniel, I don't know if you can people can open the Excel spreadsheet that's in the chat.
Oh, I think my computer is just thinking. Sorry, guys.
That actually has the complete street study on the top. I know it may be kind of awkward to see on your screen.
Can you all see that?
Wait, I need to close this now.
Is that visible to everybody?
I'm sorry,
Martin, is your hand up from before?
So can everybody see the list? at the very top of the presentation, it says SACC 2022 SOA capital funding requests.
Yes.
Can everybody see my screen? Is that what we're looking at, Kathleen? Help me out here. I need some feedback.
Yeah, you may have to widen the screen share portion to actually see it. Well, not you, Daniel. The people may.
Okay.
You know, if you widen you can see more of the report. You'll see less of us people, but that's probably okay. So what we have is complete street study of A, C, I, and L. Not yet prioritized, but I put it at the top of that list so we'd make sure to see that that's been suggested that we include it. The next item is East Street left-hand turning signal at 15th. And this is the north-south lanes. If you go through that intersection, north-south, there's a turn lane, but this traffic signal doesn't give you priority if you're turning left. You have to wait for traffic to come through that intersection. And sometimes, well, if you're lucky, you get through. Sometimes you might have to wait. So we're proposing that we actually get a signal that lets us turn left. If you're going east-west at that intersection, you have the left turn signal available. The second item on the list is undergrounding overhead utility lines. Kind of a perennial request that we'd love to have happen in our neighborhoods. Third item is 15th Avenue traffic calming study between I and E. That section of 15th Avenue is super busy and it's really difficult for pedestrians to get across 15th between I and E Street. So we're asking for attention to be paid to that section of 15th. The next item is stair replacement to the coastal trail at West 16th Avenue and I. So there's a stair that goes down from, it says, 16th Avenue to I Street. And it's used, to get down to the coastal trail. It's used for a variety of other purposes as well. And we're hoping that we could get an improvement to that stairwell that is similar to the improvement that we were successful in having made to the Frank Reed stairs. If you're familiar with them, they are at the west end of 12th Avenue, where there's kind of a cul-de-sac. Then there's a ridge and you have to climb steps. We got those stairs replaced. They're safe stairs. And we just would like to have the ones between, going from 15th down to I replaced. The next item would be Delaney Park Hockey Rink rehabilitation. This rink is a well-used, well-loved facility located downtown. It's used all the time. I used to work in a building that I could oversee that rink, and during lunch, you always hear the clack of the hockey puck against the sticks when people are down there practicing and playing. And then at night, it's used all the time. And we just think that it would really benefit Anchorage and the Delaney Park Strip if we could have that rehabilitated. The next item is the Fish Creek Trail to the ocean. It was shared with me earlier today that may already be in the design process with, what is it, the municipality. I don't know that, but if that's the case, then we may want to just take it off the list. The seventh item listed is Delaney Park, and this is basically to improve that whole strip, from, what is it, from C Street down to S, I think it goes as far as S. Anyway, Delaney Park is such a wonderful asset to the city, and we just want to make sure that it is well maintained. And then finally, the Earl and Muriel King Park. It's a neighborhood park. It's near the corner. It's between, it must be 11th, 12th, and 13th on A Street to the east side of that street. And right now it's a big open area. We did have it cleaned up a few years ago because there was a lot of brush in there, and the city went through and has kept it fairly well cleaned out. We actually asked for benches to be removed, but it's a great open park space that could be better utilized with better parking on the east side of that park, and then facilities that families would actually be able to come in and use. So we're hoping to get some equipment that would be placed in that park. If you go to the Muni website, the Community Council Survey list, there's lots more projects that are listed there. These 8, we actually prioritize them, but there's tons more projects on there, and they're there because residents of South Addition recognize those projects as something that we would like to have. But the city has always asked us to prioritize the list because we can't get everything we want. And so these 8 are the top 8 that we actually had put in order. The others are in no particular order. They just are put on the list and kept there kind of so we don't forget about them. So I would move that we accept this list and include the complete streets study. And I would propose in my motion that we make that item number 1, and then I can go through and renumber the other projects. So we would actually have 9 that we would send to Senator Begich, for him to put forward to the state of Alaska. So that's my motion, Daniel.
Do I hear a second?
And we have to have a second to discuss it.
Yes.
And then if we want to pass it on, we have to vote on the motion whether or not to put it forward.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second, and so now I'm sure we'll have some questions as well as discussion. And I did see that Ruth Ann Jennings put her hand up. So Ruth Ann, go ahead.
Yeah, I was really anxious to get my comment in there. On the 2 entries that have to do with 15th Avenue, I know that I helped work on making sure we got those in because 15th is just a mess for pedestrians, which I would like to suggest that the calming study becomes a number 1 priority, and then giving the turning light signal becomes a number 3 priority. I think that we need to focus more on giving pedestrians some room to walk on those streets. I don't mean room as in physical space. I mean, I have a horrible time crossing 15th Avenue. I cross every morning. I cross between 15th and E. I cross over to the other side of the street so I can walk down to 16th. And with all the turning lights, there's almost never an opportunity for a pedestrian to walk across the street. And the same thing with 15th, just that stretch. You've got I Street or L Street that has all the turning signals. So there's never a time when there isn't a steady stream of very fast driving cars. So I'm not so concerned about whether people have to wait for 2 cycles. I mean, like that's an extra 3 minutes out of your life or a minute, but I want to focus more on pedestrian. So maybe making the calming study the priority, the number 1 priority. And then the turning signals, the 3rd priority.
And your number 2 would be the AC complete streets. Is that right, Ruth Ann?
Yeah, I wasn't commenting on that at all.
Oh, I just meant in terms of your priority. So your number 1 would be the 15th traffic calming study. It sounds like your number 2 priority would be the AC complete streets, and then your number 3 would be the turning signal on I think it's 15th and E.
Yeah, just switching them.
Okay, let's go. Actually, Mitch, I'm going to come to you next. I did want to point out we have confirmed here from, oh shoot, where did it go? Cheryl said Fish Creek should be eliminated. AMATs informed me that it is under design and they consider it funded. So that's to Kathleen's earlier.
Okay, yep.
give that one the axe.
Thank you. Yep.
And then Mitch, go ahead, you have the floor.
Yeah, I have, I guess one of the things that I'd definitely like to see, and I think a lot of my neighbors would too, that are between 13th and 15th that are in close proximity to L Street, would be prioritizing the next time the state of Alaska does any sort of resurfacing or improvement to L Street in that, because from what I understand, that's typically when they incorporate improvements, but would be to add a noise barrier through that corridor, because that is where there's a lot of heavy acceleration occurring. I know it's been a few months since we've heard it, but if everybody could just remember back to about June and July with all the motorcycles that kind of echo through the entire neighborhood there. But in order to help not just me, but the entire neighborhood that blocks into it, help reduce the amount of noise that is transmitted into the neighborhood. And there's countless examples of these concrete barrier walls in South Anchorage. They've done that, and from what I understand, that's typically done when they do improvements on the roadway. It's rolled into an expense on that project. And there's some other good examples out on the off ramp at Muldoon when you get off the highway when you're heading eastbound. There's a good example of a concrete wall adjacent to there's a trailer park over there. But I would like to see that added.
Okay, and we did pass a resolution recently about noise. Okay, as I said earlier during my report, yes, anybody can nominate a project. So right now, I want to go to Mercedes. Mercedes, you had your hand up.
Before, sorry, Daniel. So, in order to add this, to add it in a professional manner, if I could have Mitch maybe describe the project for me in the chat, and then maybe give a little bit of detailed project description so that I can, enter that information into the Excel spreadsheet. That would be great. Otherwise, I just have a bunch of little notes that I've jotted and it's not going to be very coherent.
Perfect. And then, yeah, Mercedes, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Sure, thanks. I don't want to interrupt the deliberation. I do want to say that's a really good example of something we could also reappropriate. So if we don't have the opportunity to put it in as a new project, that might be something, because I think there might have been a capital project in the past. This is where having that past list of things that have been funded is very helpful to me to look for reappropriation opportunities. So for example, this last year, we did actually get a couple of reappropriations, and I am absolutely blanking on where it was, but they were in the district in this area of town. And so we used leftover money from an older prior capital project that was appropriated originally 5 years ago. So there were 200,000, whatever amount it was, left over, and we were able to use that for resurfacing. So that would be a great example, is a noise barrier and something that had already been appropriated by the state in the past. So this is really, really, really helpful. So if you do know of an area like that where the state had funded it, we can try to look for that too on our end as we go through the budget process. So just wanted to add that little point that there's more opportunity ahead as well.
Okay, and thank you, Mercedes. Let's go to Tomash, and then after Tomash, I'm going to kind of circle back and we're going to put what we've discussed so far into motion so we can kind of accomplish and then move on. Because so far, I think we have a motion and an amendment, but go ahead, Tomash.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to point out or maybe call our attention to having a motion on the floor for the original list of items. And I do believe we have discussed that any additions would have to go by individual motion. So we can make sure that they make it on the list with the proper discussion and then decision on that particular item. I think it would be beneficial for everyone if we try to adhere to that, so we know exactly what makes the list. So that's all I wanted to add to that. Thank you.
Absolutely. You read my mind. So I think what we should do is return. So first we had Kathleen's original motion is that we would submit this list with the addition of the AC Complete Streets reconstruction. And Kathleen, in your original motion, were you putting that as priority number 1?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm going to say that Ruth Ann made an amendment to that motion to prioritize the 15th traffic calming as number 1, with number 2 as the AC complete streets, and number 3 as the turning signal. So I want to see if there's any more discussion on that amendment before we take a vote on that.
Mr. Chair, if I may again,
Go
if
ahead,
it's an amendment, the person who made the motion should accept it, and it would be part of the original motion.
I just want to make sure there's, okay, we could do that. I just want to make sure there's nobody opposed. I think there may be some voices in the meeting who would prefer that.
Well, that's why I'm saying that if it's an amendment, then it has to be accepted, or it has to go as a separate motion.
We would vote on the amendment. So you're saying Kathleen can accept the amendment and we can just move on? Is that what you're, I just want to make sure there's nobody opposed to that prioritization, because one of the things that we're making sure is that we have consensus on what our priorities are tonight.
Yes.
Is anybody opposed? Is a question I would like to ask the group to that amendment, to putting the 15th traffic calming as the first priority, followed by the AC complete streets reconstruction, then the turning signal on 15th and E, and then the rest as previously listed. Sounds like nobody's opposed. So we're going to go with that, if that's okay. And Kathleen, you'll accept that, I'm sure.
Yes, I'll accept that amendment. Yes.
Okay, great. Good. And then we also have a separate motion now we can put on the floor from Mitch to add a noise barrier, a concrete barrier wall. And then Kathleen had requested that Mitch sort of describe that in the chat. Is that something you can do, Mitch? Because we have to submit these to Mercedes, and we can kind of help fill this out, but we've got to submit it tomorrow. So we just want to make sure that Mercedes has all the information that she needs.
Yeah, if I could get an email address. Well, I'm on an iPad here, and every time I go in and out of the chat, it deletes anything that I put in there. So it's not working out so well for me.
Okay. Do you want to email? Why don't you just email South Edition Community Council at gmail.com? Because then that way the whole executive board can see it.
Okay, will do.
Anybody opposed to adding that to our capital improvement project request?
Would you please
Yeah, I have a modification to that.
Okay, go ahead, Lois.
Actually 2 modifications. One is, I don't think we should specify concrete. We want it to be an attractive noise barrier, and there are different designs that are more attractive, some of which they're using at South Anchorage. And then secondly, I live on 15th, and my house also backs up onto Minnesota. So it has to go beyond, not just between 13th and 15th as Mitch originally defined it, because we have terrible noise issues for the first few houses on 15th. Not sure how far east of 15th, but it has to go some distance.
Okay. Just so we have it, Lois, I don't want us to miss that when we revisit this later. Will you also type that in the chat for us?
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I could do the whole thing if Mitch wants me to try to draft that.
Would you guys want to collaborate on that and then send what you're proposing to the South Edition Community Council at gmail.com email address?
I'm fine with doing that. You okay, Mitch?
Yeah, I can work with that. And yeah, I think between 13th to basically the lagoon area where the road, or fairly close to where the road bottoms out towards the lagoon, would be what we're asking for. I think that's realistic.
Yes.
Then I'm going to go to Bonnie. You have your hand up.
Well, yeah, I was just looking for a little clarification. I don't know that. Well, Mitch, could you clarify some of those, the reason they block noise is because they're so tall, and I don't think a 20-foot concrete noise barrier is quite what you have in mind. So are we going to specify or how do we, maybe Lois had some clarifications on how we could write it so that it was, it looked nice.
Yeah, I'm not, completely sold on the concrete, but it's certainly the most beneficial for blocking noise. And as I mentioned, there's some good examples of some fairly low, they're probably, I would say 10 to 15 foot in height, concrete barrier walls, and they actually have incorporated into the concrete a bunch of artwork and stuff off of Minnesota on that the exit where they redid all the intersections there on the overpass. I would recommend checking those out. That's some of the best looking examples that I've seen of the noise barriers. I know in South Anchorage, there's a lot of really tall wooden fences on some of the newer ones that they've done down there. I don't think we really want to be blocking the view of the lagoon as you come down the hill. I think that's kind of an asset. But I would say a lower-ish concrete would probably be the most effective.
Can I ask quickly before I go to Tomasz, can I ask Cheryl and Anna, they've made a point in the chat. Would you guys mind, just for the edification of the group, just sharing that verbally?
And I'll let you go ahead with that.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, President. I'm kind of new to participating in this council, so I don't want to put a lot of effort into prioritizing these and commenting. And I am an engineer at DOT. I'm a traffic engineer, so I do have a little bit of education background on this topic, and so I'm just referring to, overall, if you want to have kind of reduced speeds, which are really the reason that we're having the high noise, rather than treating just the symptoms with walls and other stuff, you'll get better overall feeling and improved quality, I guess, of the streetscape, and use of the right of way for multiple ways of travel, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll chime in and reinforce. This is Cheryl.
Yeah.
It's speeds and noise go together. That was the number one complaint when the people got together to start the comprehensive neighborhood plan. And so we passed a resolution in 2019 asking for complete street studies. I'm pretty sure it hit the file cabinet and never got taken anyway. We're on the road. We have some money in the plan to go for the complete streets redesign of ACINL. We've got it into the long range plan. So this would be the perfect time to go after that money. And if that's the highest, well, you've got Sheila and her hill with little kids crossing on C Street. And now I think all of us hate that noise on L Street at the lagoon. So those are two. I don't know if you can, Anna, is it possible just to come in with a short stretch like that? Or is it only proper to do a whole, for instance, 9th to 20th?
I think
It
realistically,
would be proper to come in and just do the lagoon, or just do Sheila's Hill at C Street on C for traffic calming.
Hello?
Who is that a question for?
Can I comment? Oh.
Anna, did you hear Cheryl's question?
I think she wanted to know whether you could piecemeal it rather than do all of the different couplets with
Yep.
yeah. So that's most likely what would happen, is they would do it in chunks, only because, I mean, if you look at, not that it's apples to apples, but just the amount of effort it takes to really redesign a stretch of road. Look at Spenard Road. We're doing it in chunks, right? And it takes a lot of environmental and planning and money and whatnot. So they would most likely do it one section at a time, realistically.
Yeah.
So I think prioritize which one you'd want to do first.
So, okay, I want to move on to Mosh and just kind of reiterate that we're discussing whether or not we want to add this noise barrier or consider other options. Tomasz, go ahead.
Yes, so I think I'm getting the clarity now on what the actual motion is. And it sounds like that it is from 13 South, building a sound barrier to mitigate sound. And I think I heard that properly, and I'm pretty sure I did. And I would absolutely support the idea of reducing noise, but I would absolutely not like the idea of choosing that mitigation method. We just heard a discussion of other methods which perhaps a bit more effective in terms of design. And I guess if we claim expertise, I can claim mine. I designed these things, and the speed is key, and the complete streets is a fairly good access to funding and the mechanisms to perhaps get there. So I think we need to look at a bigger picture here, and not diminishing the idea that it's very annoying to live close by these couplets, but perhaps a more global approach to mitigate it is a better approach. And I would not favor the wall building aspect of this in South Edition.
On that note, I think what we should do is vote on the motion. And well, let me ask this: did we get a second on the concrete wall? Lois, were you seconding that idea? Or
No, no. In fact,
excuse me.
In fact, now I've been convinced, and I like the last. And I was just writing a note into the chat. I like the last part of the resolution that Fran just posted, which is where I think we should be.
Okay.
So I'm backing off.
Okay.
You guys have convinced me that that's a better approach.
And then Mitch, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I have had conversations with the state of Alaska DOT about this topic, and also after the second time that I had a vehicle go through my backyard fence over the course of a few years that exited L Street, asking about some sort of way to contain the vehicles to L Street. And they told me that there was really no interest because of the fact that it was such a major arterial exiting a large volume of traffic out of downtown, that there was really no interest in traffic calming, because that would mean slowing down the traffic exiting downtown. That they didn't really want to even discuss that as being a potential issue. I hear what people are saying as far as, exploring other options as far as reducing speed, which would in turn reduce noise. But my take on my conversations with them is that is not going to happen. They're not going to do anything to reduce the speed of vehicles departing that arterial. I just want to put that out there.
Okay. I think what we should
Can I say one more thing about that? I mean,
go ahead, Lois.
They do have to be pushed, and one person that does say something like that, that doesn't mean that that is hard and fast, Mitch. I think if as a community we really did work together on this, we would have a reasonable likelihood of success in terms of pushing traffic calming, particularly with all the extra money that we now have from the federal infrastructure law.
All right. I think what we ought to do then is take a vote on whether we want to add to the list of our CIP request some type of noise barrier wall of a construction material and size TBD. But let's go ahead and do that now. And we're going to use our trusty old green check marks and red X's, whether or not we want to add a noise barrier, as Mitch has described. And if you had your green check mark up from before, you may want to clear it. Okay, good. So right now I'm seeing 6 green check marks and 8 red X's. This is a close one. I want to make sure we tap into our 2 people on screen. I don't know if you want to get Seth back in there or if anybody else has somebody watching with them. Okay, so we're going to say that's 9
My
red.
learning curve is limited. I'm not sure I got to vote.
Are you a green check mark or are you a red X, Sheila?
I'm an X.
Okay, so that's going to be 10.
Although, yeah, I am for some form, but I think we need to think
And then
about.
Ryan, did you have Ryan still on there?
Yeah, this is just Brian.
Just
I don't
Ryan.
have the check mark
Are you,
for some reason.
are you abstaining?
No, I'm voting yes.
Oh, you're voting yes. Okay. So,
May I make a quick comment?
Sure, Sheila.
We have these kind of common problems of fast networks, speeding through these neighborhoods. And I do think that we should work with other community councils, because as you go down these hills, people are having the same problem all along. So as we work forward to creating kind of more effective and safe streets and pleasant streets, I think we need to work with our partners in community council so that the state begins to understand that this is a major problem all over town, and it's dangerous. So.
Daniel, you're on mute.
I am on mute because my dog was misbehaving. my final count here is 10 red X's and 7 green check marks. So I would say the motion to add a noise barrier wall to our list of CIP requests as South Addition Community Council fails. And so with that, do we have any other nominations for projects before we move on to our new item of business? Anybody else want to add a nomination for a CIP request? I'm not seeing any hands or hearing any voices, so I think we can call that one good. Kathleen, go ahead.
Sorry, so if I'll just make one clarification. So it's my understanding that 15th Avenue traffic calming study is number 1.
Correct.
Number 2 is complete street study of ACI and L.
Correct.
Number 3 is E Street left-hand turning signal. Number 4 is underground overhead utility. Number 5 is stair repair. And it was pointed out to me, I have in the description that this was to access the coastal trail, and I think it's probably more properly the Chester Creek Trail.
Chester Creek, correct.
Yeah, so I'll make that change. Then item number 6 would be the Delaney Park hockey rink. Number 7, Delaney Park, the whole park, and number 8, the Earl and Muriel King Park.
All right, yep.
Okay.
That sounds good to me.
I'll get that off to Mercedes.
Okay, great work, everybody. And
all right, thank you.
We're going to, Jeff made a motion in the chat. Jeff, do you want to make that motion out loud? Go ahead. Jeff has motion that we should extend the meeting. I would say maybe a little bit past 9:15. What about 9:30? How's everybody feel about that?
I make a motion that we extend the meeting till 9:30.
No, that's much too long.
Well, that doesn't mean we have to go that far.
Everybody will fill the time.
It's a ceiling, not a rule, but we do have another
second.
We got a second. We have another important item of business, and that's going to be our AMAT's tip nominations, and Cheryl's going to present on that. And I'm sure, well, before that, we also have the formation of a proposed transportation subcommittee. So we do want to make sure that we address that. We have so we have a nomination to extend the meeting, or excuse me, a motion to extend the meeting and a second to 9:30. We have one voice in opposition. I think that we should probably vote on that. So let's go ahead and use our reactions. Clear your check marks and your X's. Go ahead and clear everything, everybody. All you got to do on that, Sheila, is just hit it again. Hit that green check mark again. It'll go away.
Like to read me.
And then put your new response up. If you're okay with extending the meeting until 9:30. And again, it's a ceiling, not a rule. We don't have to go that long.
My green box doesn't ever go away.
Much to Ruth Ann's chagrin, it looks like the motion passes. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to turn the floor over to Cheryl. Go ahead and clear your responses, everybody. And Cheryl, make sure you're off mute if you can. And
Hi, can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Great. Well, this should be brief. It shouldn't be too bad for controversy. I do have a pitch, and the pitch is that Anchorage is changing its transportation goals and objectives, and it's largely due to neighborhood activism and the assembly. For about 2 or 3 years, and AMATS is listening. So we are in the best position we've ever been in since I started this work to get our complete streets, our speeds reduced, our sidewalks cleaned up, our trails connected. In that light, I recommend that South Addition form a transportation committee to bird dog our priorities with the city and state. And even with Lisa Murkowski, I imagine there's federal money coming through. So we have a lot of opportunity. That's the big pitch. The Biden administration and Secretary Buttigieg are singing the same song. We've talked already too much about I, L, A, and C, but they are just very harmful and have been for decades. I mentioned earlier that noise and traffic are the number 1 complaints at the first neighborhood plan committee meeting, neighborhood meeting. The committee would basically do the bird dogging and make reports, and then tell other members what they could do to help if you have too much noise or need more safety. The things right before us right now, as Daniel mentioned, are the Transportation Improvement Program nominations. And Daniel, if you could please put that list up, we could get started there so people could see. We pulled projects from the Capital Improvement Program that qualified for this funding. It's federal dollars allocated to Anchorage through AMATS. And the projects are all eligible for this local funding. Many of them are also eligible for state funding. So we need to remember that when we talk to Mercedes. Oh, sorry, Mercedes, your state. Yes, your state. The other thing I'll just warn you about is about once a month, we need to make comments on the long-range plan for Anchorage. That's called the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. But
What's that?
Sorry,
that's no big deal, and we can do that. So I have already spoken with the Downtown Partnership. They support our efforts for complete streets. And I know that other community councils are doing similar work. Rogers Park, Rabbit Creek is very active. Airport Heights is active. Probably there are others. Of course, Fairview's got its Gamble Ingra, which thank God we're not suffering from that. So tonight I'm going to ask you to please, number 1, say yes to forming a committee. Number 2, volunteer for that committee, please. If we submit these 6 projects, they will each need to have a form filled out that AMATS has put together. It's a easy form. And Ruth Ann, I'll encourage you to do fill out the form for 15th Avenue. So that's that. See, we've got the list. So tonight you can add to that list if you like. And Daniel and I talked about it and potentially leave this list open for another 7 days because the deadline for this list to be submitted is February 14. So we have some flexibility with it. But again, what I'm asking tonight is to please say yes to forming a committee. Number 2, please volunteer for the committee. And then let's check out these projects and see what you think about them, if they're worthy of asking EMATs to finance them. And we got to get rid of that Fish Creek Trail. It's already financed.
That one's gone.
Thank you. Okay, guys, what do you think?
Okay, so the first question is, should the South Addition Community Council form a transportation subcommittee? I would entertain a motion.
Oh, I move to do that, to start a form a transportation subcommittee.
Is there a second?
I second.
Wonderful. Are any opposed to forming a transportation subcommittee? I'm going to hit my stop share here for a second. Seeing and hearing none opposed, we have a transportation subcommittee. Now, would anybody like to volunteer for the transportation subcommittee?
My wife volunteered me, so and she's always been correct, so I'm volunteering.
Okay.
I will volunteer.
Thank you, Martin.
So we have
Thank you, Sheila.
Martin and Sheila. That's 2 already. Anybody else? Anna, you have a thumbs up. Does that mean you're volunteering?
Yep.
Tomas, will you serve as an advisor occasionally?
Oh, Cheryl already got me
Okay.
forked over, so yeah.
Yeah.
Tomas is very generous.
He is.
This is fantastic. So, okay, there's our committee so far, and I'm sure that you guys would happily accept additional volunteers in the coming days.
Very much so.
All right. So then next, let's go ahead and discuss those tip nominations. Would anybody like to add another nomination to AMAPS for Transportation Improvement Program?
I would like to share some information. When I was planning director, when I was on the assembly, over and over again, we would have experts come in and look at our city and do plans for us. And they would always say that our downtown streets are too fast. And downtown streets, you usually want people to slow down and look at what's going on. And we have basically a freeway through downtown. So the idea of thinking about downtown as a kind of, well, now we don't have problems anymore with people downtown, but in order to get a better kind of feel downtown and a safer downtown, most cities, and actually get people engaged in downtown, most people slow down the traffic. And there's always a reason we can't. They always no, we can't. We've talked about doing one-way streets, they would be slower, but it's something that at least we should look into because every single evaluation of the downtown streets in Anchorage the recommendations have been to slow them down. And the other thing is that C Street was slower until we talked about the bridge, putting the bridge in. The bridge needed a primary direct point downtown. And we temporarily actually increased the assembly increased the speed on C Street in agreement with the state just to accommodate the bridge. The bridge never got built, but the street is now faster and continues. It's interesting. Things don't go away very easily.
Well, I think we are all fans of safe, walkable streets, and I'm excited about conversions to complete streets. And I really do want to thank Cheryl for helping identify projects that are compatible with what AMAPS requires for acceptable nominations. And Deborah commented in the chat, pedestrian street closures worked during COVID for restaurants. And I'll do a big amen to that. I loved going to Crush around the corner from my work, and they had the lawn games out there and everything. And so very excited about our new transportation subcommittee. And then what Cheryl and I had talked about, because we want to make sure, I know this is sort of a lot to throw at the general membership all at once. So if other people do want to submit nominations, Cheryl, I think what we had discussed is giving them until February 3rd that they could submit those ideas to your new committee. And then that would give enough time for those forms to be filled out and submitted to AMATs. Does that sound good?
That sounds good to me. I'd like to have a way of reporting back to the membership on this, but I don't know mechanically how that would work.
Yeah.
So I'd like to not do it by surprise. Maybe we can wait till the next meeting, but it wouldn't hurt my feelings to get the information out there before the 14th so people could
we can coordinate.
Make a noise if they need to, or applaud if they need to.
You bet. And the executive board can coordinate with you on that to get the word out. So if there are, subsequent nominations, we can do an FCC email, we can post on Facebook and Nextdoor, etc. Ruth Ann, go ahead.
Cheryl, I have a question. I'm on the AMATs and I'm looking at the forms. I see where you fill out the individual forms for each of the projects. So I'm happy to fill out this form with respect to the 15th between C and I guess the entrance to Minnesota.
Great.
But what are we going to, are other people committed to filling out the forms for these other projects?
We've got names. Yeah, we've got names. They will all be filled out and we'll go offline so we don't worry about it in this particular meeting. But thank you for picking up 15th Avenue. And we'll negotiate on the others. Look at them all filled out.
Is that something that the subcommittee then can be tasked with?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, great. Any other discussion on that? Sheila, you look like maybe you're trying to say something.
I know my dog is barking.
Okay.
I'm trying to I don't know if I want to make sure you're not hearing him.
I have a restless dog as well. Well, what I would like, just so we have it on the record, if we could take a vote then that we will go ahead and, oh, you know what, Brian had a question in the chat. Are all of the tip items also in our capital improvement project priorities that we just approved? Just wondering about the relationship between the two. I believe the answer to that is yes. And we're just throwing it out to multiple sources of funding because there's only so much money.
I do want to flag, Daniel, I'm sorry to interrupt. I do want to flag one difference. The CIP list calls about studying complete streets. The TIP list talks about building them.
Yeah, we just used the verbiage of just reconstruction there. That's a good
Thank
point
you.
there.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is we don't have the, I forget what it's called, the pedestrian connection from Stolt Lane to the coastal trail is not on the CIP list as a priority.
So that was pulled out from one of the non-prioritized ones, I
Probably,
believe.
yes.
Because it had previous council authorization. It was pulled from lower in the list.
Yeah,
as having had previous council action.
Right. We would like to see that happen, but I think over the course of a couple of years, we sort of decided that, well, the railroad wouldn't ever in our lifetime approve that sort of thing. And so we said, well, let's keep it on the list, but just not prioritize it until we're ready to fight for it, which it sounds like maybe we are.
Ye have not because ye ask not. So on that note, I'm going to share the screen one more time, just so we can see what we have so far. To recap, these are our current nominations: complete streets reconstruction of AC and IO couplets, the traffic calming study, 15th Avenue between I and E, replacing the I Street stairs connecting I Street with the Chester Creek Trail, coastal trail access at 9th and Stolt. And then just what I'd like to do is take a vote that we are going to for these nominations, also accept subsequent nominations from South Addition residents, subject to review by our new Transportation Subcommittee, and that we would have deadlines of February 3rd to submit those to the committee for review. And then we have a hard deadline of February 14th for the Transportation Subcommittee to then submit to AMATS. So I want to take a vote on that here in just a second, quickly, because Ruth Ann raised her hand. Go ahead, Ruth Ann. You may be on mute. Can you hear me, Ruth Ann?
I'm sorry, my dog was barking. I didn't hear anything you just, I don't know what you asked me.
Oh, I thought you had a question because your hand was raised. Was that
Oh,
from-
no, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. And then Lois, go ahead.
Yeah, Cheryl, this is a question for you. I don't know if this should go on the list or not, but I've had a problem biking from end to downtown, and maybe it's just a signage thing, but you end up on going the wrong way on sidewalks on L. So I don't know how to fix it exactly, and it's not probably may not be something very expensive, but what do you think? Should that go on the
maybe? Well, Lois, if you could communicate maybe exactly what you're talking about, where you start running into trouble, and then maybe you and I could work out some language.
Sure.
Okay. Because that is definitely eligible. They've got a couple categories, including bike ped is one of them.
Do you want to give me say that one more time briefly, Lois? Biking on N Street?
Yeah, as you cross the park strip on N and you're trying to go to downtown, I end up taking the side streets and then eventually getting on the sidewalk on L, which I know I'm not supposed to be doing. So there's got to be a better plan. Going the wrong way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does this capture it?
Maybe we could talk.
Yeah.
With a map.
I'm just going to briefly, Cheryl, I'm just going to briefly add it to our little list.
Yes.
And then you guys can flesh it out. But let's go ahead and I'm going to take a vote on just, again, it's sort of a, Sheila, go ahead.
Well, as I look at this, it seems to me that, I don't know if we need to do it tonight, but it seems to me that we need a traffic calming study on C Street between 15th and 10th and 9th, because that area has, it's so fast. And so how about adding that one in there?
I'm adding it.
Well, complete streets is including traffic calming. It's so comprehensive.
That's maybe already addressed then.
That's what I thought initially, but then
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
it's gotten.
Okay, so I think we got a good list here. I'd like to take a vote on it. I'd like to, the vote is to, again, it's kind of a doozy here, but to forward these nominations to task the Transportation Subcommittee with filling out the forms for AMATS. And then for subsequent nominations, those will be subject to review by the Transportation Subcommittee. Those can be added, but they have to get those to the Transportation Subcommittee by February 3rd. I see Mitch has his hand up. This is the last pre-vote question or comment before we take a vote. Go ahead, Mitch, because we're running into our timeline. It's 9:26. We only got to 9:30.
Yeah, I'd like to add traffic calming and noise mitigation between L Street or on L Street between 13th and Lagoon.
Mitch, I think that would be included. It's such a big problem, and it's, the whole neighborhood. I think it's covered under complete streets reconstruction of INL. Do you think there would be an advantage just to pulling that section separately?
I think Mitch's thing is the noise mitigation component.
Yeah, the street reconstruction speaks more to the construction of the road, at least how I read it. I'm just trying to prioritize the reducing noise impact on the neighborhood through that acceleration area.
That would be one major consequence of the reconstruction.
Here's what I'm gonna
one
do.
purpose and one consequence.
I'm gonna put that in parentheses, guys, and I'm gonna have you discuss that offline, okay?
Yeah, that's great.
And then, go ahead, Mitch.
Perfect.
That's everything.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and take a
Noise
vote.
mitigation at the lagoon.
Martin, we gotta take this vote because we're running up against our 9:30. So if you are in favor of submitting these nominations to AMATs and having our transportation subcommittee that was newly formed this evening process the request via the forms for AMATs, and the deadlines of February 3rd to submit to additional nominations to the subcommittee, vote yes. Let's see your green check mark. If you are opposed to any of that, let us know by hitting a red X.
Daniel, could you stop sharing? Good, thank you.
Yep. I don't see any opposed. So that motion carries. I see 14 green check marks on the auto count. So we know we have at least 14 supporters for that motion. Okay, we have 2 minutes left for open community comments. Look at how efficient we were. We did some major stuff tonight, guys. I'm proud of us. Anybody have an additional comment they would like for the edification of the group? Go ahead, Deborah. Ms. Hanson, Mrs. Hanson.
Hi there. I've had a number of meetings about Inlet View School and don't mean to beat the dead horse, but I was told that the reason the South Addition Community Council wasn't informed about it earlier was because they should have been looking at the newsletter from Inlet View School and they would have known all. I have tried 3 times to sign up for the newsletter. I'm supposed to be on it and I have yet to get one. So that's a complaint. If Margot, I don't think Margot Bellamy is still on, but I'll email her because it's been very frustrating. I keep being told I'm on it, but then I don't get any emails. So it just is frustrating because I do look at the South Addition Community Council agendas and I did not see anything about Inlet View School until it came up in September.
Okay.
And you guys are supposed to be protecting us and planning and all that too. So, I mean, that's all part of it.
To that point, Deborah, I can't speak on behalf of the former executive board, and nor can I, without permission, speak on behalf of this executive board. But I think that we were surprised by a lot of the information that came our way too. So we were playing catch up, just like everybody else.
Be a downsider, but I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I would love to hear a second to that motion.
Second.
We have a second. Okay, our next executive meeting is Thursday. Well, it's going to be in February, the 4th Thursday of February. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you,
everyone.
Thanks, Daniel. Good job.
Thanks. Appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Night all.